you shout, people back up. But when you whisper, they lean in and they're curious.
I like it.
Hi, I'm CHAR. I am a loving, passionate, and creative human being, indigenous to the exotic island of Jamaica, West Indies. My name, Charmaine, was handpicked by the divine, for I am the quintessence of its core meaning, singer, song, delight. The ultimate purpose of my platform is to transform lives by empowering people to embrace the greatness within and impact the world for the better. Henry Kent Smith grew up in a city that has seemingly produced more successful low-end groove makers per capita than any city in the world. Henry has worked hard to become one of Chicago's best. A 25-year music industry veteran, Henry is part of a rich tradition of world-class Chicago bassists. His performance resume showcases the Chi-Town musical trademarks of talent, hustle, and versatility to work in any musical genre. Sandy Cummings is a jazz singer and coach. Her early singing career started in 1970 through 1974. Sandy was born in Brooklyn, New York, and arrived in California in 1953. She lived up and down the state until college and has been in Santa Barbara since 1965. Sandy earned a bachelor's in sociology and a master's in psychology and is a retired volunteer marriage and family counselor after practicing for 22 years. Sean Mason, a native of Chicago, is a versatile artist, entertainer, writer, and public speaker. He is the host of the indie TV Live from the Cave. Sean's love for lyrics led him to sharpening his skills as a poet, and he eventually gave birth to a blog called The Lens of My Life, through which he shares his insight on life, love, and relationships. That name pays homage to the Chicago-based photography business Sean began in 2012. Cherise Red, raised in the near west suburbs of Chicago, Cherise graduated from Proviso West High School and earned a Bachelor of Arts degree in marketing at Columbia College. Cherise birthed the persona Chicago Red, created from the first three letters of her name, her pronoun, and the town she loves. From this persona, Cherise wants to provide commentary on a variety of topics such as dating over 50, where does the 50-plus crowd hang out, and elder parent care, among other things, from the perspective of a woman. She enjoys quiet time at home, alone. She says, if you can't enjoy being alone with yourself, who can?
So I think one of the most important parts of the art of proper communication is not only listening, but being able to take off your own lens in order to really fully understand and empathize with someone else's point of view. Because you know that statement, point of view, literally means that other people are seeing the same situation from a different place. So the only way you can find that commonality or that understanding of everyone's perspective is to be willing to take off your own lens so that you can really understand where the other person's coming from.
All right, everyone. Welcome, everybody.
Hey.
Hey.
Hey, there's beautiful faces. So good to have you all here.
Good to be here.
Okay, so as you all know, you can probably figure it out, that was my daughter. She is 32 years old.
I
She
did
just
not know that. I didn't catch that.
You didn't? Yes, she's a pre-registered psychotherapist. She just graduated with her, she just finished her master's program to become a psychotherapist. And usually whenever I'm having issues with understanding different subject matters in our conversations, I tend to ask her, just so she can, I can hear it in a different way. And she understands me and how I process. Because of course, I don't know about the rest of you guys, but when I was growing up, conversation wasn't a thing. It was kids are seen and not heard. So unfortunately, I grew up with that mindset where I didn't share my opinions. I didn't share my ideas. I just took everything as face value, where that's the purpose of this platform, is to encourage dialogue and honest communication. So with adult conversations, we've been having some transparent, some transparency in our dialogue. And Henry and I, from the last show, there was something that he brought up, and apparently the way I comprehended it was different. He said that he and Will, this is the art of communication. And he said that he and Will actually said something that was exactly the same, but I didn't interpret it as the same. So I want to play that now. We're just going to look at it and just like dissect it.
Andrew's laugh.
Okay. Now, I'm not going to tell you how I interpreted it, but I want anybody to chime in. Tell me what you got from those two. Do you see the same thing?
Are they both the same thing?
Did you,
Well,
you remember
from
what?
Is that your question? I didn't hear you.
Go ahead, Sean.
I was going to say, from a verbiage standpoint, I understand how somebody would read them and maybe get something different. Knowing those two gentlemen and anticipating what Will was saying and what Kenry was saying, they were saying the same thing, the exact same thing.
Okay.
Different. It's just a different way of framing it. Kenry is saying, I'm here now. You don't know where I'm going to be 10 minutes from an hour or a week. Deal with the person that's here, not the one you think I'm going to be or you want me to be. Is that correct, Henry? Did I get that right?
Absolutely.
Okay. Will's was a little bit more convoluted because there was a tense thing going on. I got lost in the language a little bit, but I kind of got that they both meant the same thing.
Okay. So what I broke down to Henry is, okay, so with Will's, let me see if I can find.
I think where Will placed the word not could throw you off a bit. But like I said, knowing him a bit and knowing Kenry for an adult's amount of years, and speaking his language largely most of the time, I know exactly what he was saying.
So I leaned more into, I understood Will's version of saying this a lot easier than I did with Kenry, because I shared that in my relationship, my marriage, I saw my ex-husband's present and did not look at his potential. And in the 23 years, the person that I married wasn't who I saw in the future. He became somebody totally different, which is why that threw me off. So when I read Will, to me, he was acknowledging both the present and the potential, which I think when we're entering relationships, we should look at both, right?
But see, here's the thing. I never said don't look at the potential. I just said I'm very plain in that statement, and to the point. It's just don't. Basically, let's pay attention to right now. You can look at all the potential in the world, but if you miss the cues and the red flags or green flags or whatever they might happen to be in the present, hoping that in the future they become somebody else, or they're going to grow, or you're going to groom them, or whatever it might happen to be, then you're going to be so busy trying to see a potential that you're going to miss loving that person right now in the present. And that's mainly what I'm saying. I'm not negating looking at anything else. It's just a simple, let's live right now, because that's what we have.
If I could jump in real quick, because I've lived this actual thing. What Kennery could also be saying, I'm not saying he is, I'm saying this is what I got from the statement. Oftentimes, we look at somebody and we look at what they're doing. Say, for example, CHAR, somebody comes into your life right at the time that your show is peaking, and he's looking at you, and in his mind, you're on your way to being the next Oprah. And that makes you that much more appealing to him. But God writes a different plan. And that's not who you ultimately become. And that's not where you ultimately land. If the meat of his attraction to you is based on what he sees your life being in the next 5, 10, 15 years, he could ultimately feel cheated because he didn't get the version of you that he thought he was signing up for, which is, to me, and I've had, because I'm a person that's always been in the arts and, been labeled talented, gifted, this or that, I've had people notice me for what they thought I was going to end up doing and being. And then if that didn't happen, they felt like, wow, I really thought this was going to be a much more fun ride. Where are the celebrities? There's no celebrities on this ride. So I think that's part of and then to Kennery's point, if you do that, there could be this wonderful energy right in front of you that you could learn to appreciate and would want for the rest of your life, but you miss it because you're looking down the road at, what you want them to become. And
to that point, just real quick, I mean, I always use my marriage as an example for good and ill, but like I got married in 2006. Pretty much the week after I got married, I had the tour in Europe. I went, so I was like big baller, oh, I'm going to Europe, baby. We'll have our honeymoon when I come back. I went on tour to Europe a week after I got married. And then I, took her to various shows. She met Nancy Wilson. She, all the celebrity stuff, all the good fun stuff was happening. We were going places and VIP and all that stuff. So I don't know what she thought that was going to lead to, but financial crisis and a million other things changed a lot of that. So, those are things that were out of my control. Yet if her mindset was more set on who she thought I was going to be down the road, then instead of my core being who I was right now, who I have been to her every day, then I think we might have had a different outcome, but I don't know.
Yeah,
And
I really don't know. Go ahead.
The problem that I see with potential at my age now is that potential may not ever manifest. And if I'm basing my attachment with someone on what I think they can be, then I'll be frustrated if they never become that.
And that applies at all ages.
Yeah, that's why it's flawed, because we can't write the divine story for someone. We only know what it looks like, and we only know what it looks like in that moment. It could be because your heart is taken to a different place. It could be an injury. It could be a whole lot of things. It could be a health condition. It could be a whole lot of things that derail, what your plans were, and so you kind of always say, I don't want to date anybody who wouldn't be content with me exactly the way my life is right now, within reason. I mean, if if I'm, life is about ebbs and flows, peaks and valleys. So, you catch me in a valley, I'm not saying you should love me in this valley forever, if it's not just a typical peak and valley that you see in the natural course of life. But, if I'm trying to be the next Oprah, but I'm not there yet, I want you to be okay with where I am right now. And if you can't be okay with where I am right now for the duration, then I'm probably not your guy, because I don't know what's in the future.
So thank you so much. So, okay, I know you can't really base intimate relationship on a relationship. Like I think about a job interview when people are, there's the employer and the employee. And, people have talked about the imaginary, I think what Kennery talked about the imaginary table. When people say, what are you bringing to the table? Like at what point in communication to get to know each other? Because like I said, in my marriage, it was total opposite. I never even I didn't judge him by the potential. I knew just the way he carried himself, that we were going to do some big things together. And I based the relationship moving forward with him just based on that alone. But it didn't turn out that way. So at what point do you think in the relationship before you go to take that next step that should you talk about what you're going to bring to the table?
Well, to be fair for you, Char, you were young, and you have to understand that there are predators, there are wolves in sheep clothing out there, and oftentimes there are people who are presenting their representatives, and in order to get what they want. So, if I think about how old were you when you got married?
I was 19.
When I think about my 19-year-old self, I would have been a fool for a lot of things that, experience has taught me to not be a fool for. But it's not a character flaw. It's experience and it's life. So, but when you have also someone who is, how old was he?
He's 4 years older than me.
Okay. So he wasn't that much more experienced.
Exactly. So I have to say this. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, because in his defense, I don't think, because let me tell you, I'm a planner, I'm an organizer, big dreamer, all that. And he matched all that, he could account for every penny that he spent before we got married. And then when we got married, it was like everything just went out the window. And I honestly, when I think about it now, it's like it was fear, because he didn't have that training, how to be a husband. He didn't have an example of how to all the responsibilities. That's the only thing I could think of, because I don't know, all the other stuff I'm telling you, I never even saw that coming.
But here's the thing. Again, coming back to the present thing, paying attention and loving someone in the present. If we really focus on the present, kind of beam in on it, sometimes, not always, but sometimes we can see things that will give us warning. What happened with him was not life, it was a character flaw. What the way you have described who he was and who he changed to, that was a character flaw. That was not life happened to him or he didn't have experience and then he just kind of changed. This is a totally different person that you ended up with. And so to me, it's hard to see through that, especially when you're young and you haven't had any experience either. But the fact of the matter is, we all have life. I've had some life and I'm having some right now. But my character is allowing me to work through it, where I'm trying not to allow those challenges to change who I am. And that is the thing that's key with anyone that we get involved with. You want somebody who is going to stay as true to who they are through thick and thin that they can. And that's a core characteristic.
Okay. Well, let's talk about the love languages, because I don't know how many of you on here, we're all over 50, I think, right?
Yes.
50 and over.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't 50 and over. I'm still young, so whatever. But but I know I want to pursue being in a relationship. I want to spend my life with somebody, and I don't want to make the same mistakes that I made before. So the love languages, I mean, learning to communicate. How many of you are familiar with the love languages?
I am.
I forget exactly what they are, but
Sean? Okay, I'm going to read them. So, oh God, I need my glasses. Here we go. Love language.
I'm young.
The five love languages: words of affirmation, verbal and written compliments, unexpected praise and recognition. Number 2, acts of service, doing things for other people that brings them joy. Number 3, physical touch. Love is felt through non-sexual touch, hugging, and general physical presence. And quality time. Number 4, giving your attention to another person, active listening, and making time for loved ones. And number 5, receiving gifts, which includes enjoying surprise gifts and tangible symbols of thoughtfulness and effort. So I don't know why it sounds so simple, but why is it so difficult for us to communicate these things to a potential spouse, a partner? What do you all think? Because I mean, I want to be able to find someone that I can communicate in a healthy way.
Everybody's map is different. Okay.
I don't think it's hard for most people to communicate what they want. I think what's hard is for someone to interpret what that means to you, because I can love you the best way I know how, but that may not be what you need as my lover. So I need my lover to tell me what it is that they desire, what it is that they want, what's important to them. And it has to compute in my mind that this is what they want, this is how they want it, and how does that work for me? How do I do that without it being fake or phony? I need it to be genuine.
Yeah.
So I think that's where some people, where the communication breaks. I can say what I want, but can you give it to me the way I'm telling you I want it?
Okay, thank you. Sandra?
We come into adulthood in a rather haphazard way. We have to come through adolescence, and that's enough to kill most of our spirits. Trying to be acceptable and accepted by others, trying to be a part of something bigger than ourselves, separating from family. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on. And we also have what I call a map that we have from our own homes that we come into. Oh, this is the way it was in my house, so therefore that's what my house is supposed to look like going forward, even though it wasn't satisfactory.
Right.
And so everybody's map is different. And if your maps don't overlap, you're going to have a heck of a time getting to the common ground that you both share. And I think Charisse was kind of hitting it on, it's like, I may say, gee, I really like that you're paying attention to me. Well, that's a broad term. What does paying attention to me mean?
Right.
For one person, it's bring me presents, bring me this, take me to dinner, do that. For another person, it's just write me a poem. Or just hold my hand and look in my eyes for 10 minutes.
Yes.
And it's starting with that. But besides just seeing someone in the future, you have to also stop seeing someone as their past. So if mistakes have been made in the past, you got to be able to move on from, well, this is what you've always done. You're never going to be different. But that sort of negative language you'll start entering into. It's hard to get down to the core and jump in, anybody right here if you agree or disagree.
No, we're listening to the expert.
You preaching a whole sermon. Saying
What?
Right.
Quiet. Yeah, I'm like, okay, you keep dropping that science. No,
Yes. Good stuff.
Dropping the science, is that what you're calling? Well, I treated couples. It was my favorite population to work with because it's hard enough to be in the room with one other person and have communication work without too many hitches. When you have a third person in the room, everybody's perspective is different, literally, physically, Because if I'm looking at two other people, they're looking back and one of them is seeing me, the other one is seeing me, but then I'm not seeing me. So you can have different dimensions in a relationship. I loved working with making the implicit explicit. This is often where women get caught up in the idea that they're supposed to be taken care of and how it's supposed to be done, because we had Father Knows Best and Donna Reed and all those TV shows that gave us templates about how home life was supposed to be, and our houses didn't look like that. We didn't have any example in our own experience. So we grow up with a fairy tale, the fantasy that can't be lived as we imagine it, but we can create our own. We can have some construct of input to creating the space that we want to live, the peacefulness, the passion, the intensity, the quiet, the doldrums, dealing with the ups and downs of everything. And a lot of time that just takes age. You start letting go of expectations that you once thought were important and they really aren't. I lost a husband after 22 years of marriage. And I had a long, hard thought after he died. Would I take him back if I could?
Wow.
And
I'm almost afraid to hear this answer,
no,
Sandy.
actually, what I came up with is a great deal of sadness, because our disconnectedness, while I thought had to do with him, really had to do with me not creating a space safe enough for him to open up, to reveal himself better. And I had a great deal of grief around that. But it wasn't long to stay that way, because I had a couple come into treatment that it worked very well for me to remember that moment when I asked myself, what I had a couple that they were just bickering all the time. I called them the Bickersons affectionately. They just fought for the heck of it. And every week they bring in the fight of the week. And for the first year I worked with them, I couldn't get past the fight of the week. And I was supposed to be the referee post-mortem. And so he had just died about 2 weeks before, and they came in for treatment, and they knew that he had died. So I said to him, I said, look, I'm not sure this is working. They said, what? That we do a fight of the week every week and nothing's shifting in your relationship. So I want to know if you're both invested in really working on your relationship. And they said, yes. I said, okay, close your eyes. Because I want you both to answer this, but I want you not to look at each other while you're thinking about it. If your partner were to leave you tomorrow, what would you miss?
Wow.
That is a whole other dimension. That's, oh my God, why did I like him? What did I get connected with? Where is the guy that I met in the first place? Where is the woman? And their eyes flew open and they looked at me and they realized that came from a really personal place. And I said, look, I'm not asking you to reinvent the wheel. I'm just asking you to take a peek at what it was like when it was good. You can get there. You can't go forward with where you are from now. Ultimately, they stayed together. They wanted to have children. I was so shocked. I ran into him about 3 years ago. I was very grateful to know that drop of water from me, that one question opened a river of information inside themselves.
Good stuff. Wow.
Because
That's a powerful question.
I mean,
I mean,
What did you miss? Not what didn't you want? What did you miss?
Yes.
we get caught up in our, what's right there in front of our face, what's making us upset or angry or whatever.
Yeah.
And we miss that. CHAR, that's kind of like that, the picture of the two sculptures that I sent you.
Tobias, you can put that up now. Keep talking.
Oh, did I bring it up soon?
Yes. I was gonna mention that. Go ahead, you can talk about it. Go ahead.
But it's, there's there's that inner
I've seen that before. Yeah, it's
still wants to connect. And if we just go back to that simplicity, if we could, it's hard for a lot of people. And some people, they're just beyond that space. But that's always the thing that will allow for a reevaluation and a reset if you let it.
Yeah, and that's the fear, isn't it? Is this the fear of actually revealing the final layer of exposure? Can I really trust this person? when you've been married as long as I was, and you come to realize that you never really trusted him, well, that's scary. Not because
That's scary.
it's not trusting because of infidelity, but not trusting him to hold my worst thoughts and feelings and love me anyway. You know what I mean? It's that sort of thing. And I realized it too late. But it did a lot of work. It caused me to do a lot of inner work and listen differently. When I hear people in conflict, I'm really good at conflict resolution, because one guy and gal came in, and usually the battle is over how many times a week people are having sex. And generally, as a general rule, men want more sex than women do, though that's not always true.
That's what I was about to say. But okay.
So this girl was, her way of punishing him was to deprive him of sex. Now, do you know any women in this room that have ever done that? I will admit to that. Just, I'm so mad at you. Don't come near me. Don't touch me. So I looked at her and I said, I asked her if she liked.
What'd you say, Sean?
I'm laughing at Sharice. Sharice is like, he might try to punish me by not giving me some.
But I think this is a fairly
I don't care whether we're mad or not. It's going down.
It's going down.
But women often function from a passive aggressive place. And so they won't let you have access to her face or her eyes or anything, because she's so pissed to the tits that you can't do nothing. So this girl was probably about 25 at the time. And I looked at her and she's really mad at him. And I said, okay, I have to ask you a basic question. She said, what? I said, do you like sex? Oh yeah, I love sex. I really love it. I said, okay, can you help me understand then how this punishment works? You're punishing yourself while you're trying to punish him. You need to find some other way to punish him. You need to figure out another way.
Don't cook or something.
And you can't punish him by not saying anything, because he wants you to shut up. So
yeah. So I mean, every dynamic has its own little doorway, and a therapist, all they can do is try to figure out how to crack the enormously hard shell on the outside. Therapists don't have answers, they just have questions, really good questions, and they make you think like you never wanted to think before. And it comes down to personal responsibility. What is it I want? How can I get there from here? What do I need to do to make this better? And if everybody's doing that, sooner or later, you're going to land in the same spot. But there, all of these are factors, Kennery. You're thinking the thing about the potential. I don't believe I ever thought of my husband in that way, but I do remember thinking, gosh, he's capable of so much more than what he's doing. He would complain a lot. He'd be unhappy in his job. I said, well, change jobs. I don't care. We'll figure it out. Go change. And he was just afraid, and he couldn't say he was afraid. And I wasn't prepared enough at that time to know that that's what the issue was.
Right.
That's hard to recognize. It's hard to recognize in people, because they'll color it as something else, even your fault. So, you know, and the same as with, so one of the things that CHAR and I talked about before, just on off time, communication wise, is when somebody doesn't communicate exactly what they feel in a situation, so you don't know how to respond. Like you said, Sandra, you don't know what to do, because we can't read minds, and oftentimes we think, through familiarity, that we should be able to read each other's minds, and that's just not possible. But I think that we just don't take a moment to stop. Here's the phrase you weren't familiar with, CHAR, digging our potatoes.
What?
So digging our potatoes. So if somebody is trying to communicate something to us, and you're supposed to be giving them space to do that, and you're supposed to be actively listening. Instead, you're actually spending that time coming up with your response. You're digging your potatoes like you were jumping double dutch, and you're just on the sideline, just
waiting for your turn.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's one of the main problems with how we miss hearing each other, besides the fact that some people don't know how to communicate what they're feeling too. So It's two sides, but
like you said, we listen to respond. We don't listen to receive and process and then, answer with that equipment. We, like most of the time I've seen people, I'm saying something and then they jump in 35. I'm 35% of the way through 100% I'm saying, and they jump in and respond. Well, you can't be responding to the 100% of what I was going to say because I never got to say it.
Right.
So you're only responding to 35% of what I was going to say. And that other 65% may have been the answer to your question, or it may have been something that would have negated you responding in the way that you are responding now. But we're so equipped to jump in the minute. And I will tell you, if you start preparing your response, you're no longer listening.
That's right.
Not only did you respond to 35% of it, you didn't even hear the 65%.
Exactly.
might not have heard the 35%.
Yeah,
really.
because you were preparing your own answer.
Right.
But something that you guys said a little earlier, I thought was so poignant in regard to the communication piece. It's so vital because a lot of people, I know a lot of people, probably men a lot, are like me. The lady that I've been dating for the last couple of months, she admits that she's not this great communicator, right? And so I'm a communicator until I feel like it's no longer being valued.
Yes.
As long as I feel like it's being valued, I'm typically an all-in communicator. And we had a conversation today, just today, that revealed to me something that changed a perspective that I had for the last 2 months. But because it was something that she had not explained to me, I was left to define it myself. Because especially as a man, I'm not going to keep circling back. I'm gonna ask you about this. I'm gonna try to get my answer. And if I can't get my answer or the answer to my satisfaction, then I'm going to look at the lay of the land and I'm going to come up with what I think the answer must be, because I can't get the answer from you. You're not giving me the solid answer. And so in a conversation today, my lady friend shared something with me. And I remember thinking, had I known this, I would have had a lot more peace over the last 2 months.
Yeah.
Over the last 2 months, I've had to process your behaviors myself. And I had to say, okay, well, this looks like this. So this must mean that. And this looks like this. And it must mean that. And the reason that that's so important is because the thing that she told me is something I would have never considered in a million years. And that's why just looking at the lay of the land is never enough.
Yeah.
You have to tell somebody what you're thinking. You have to tell them what's on your mind. And for some, maybe worse than others. For me, I'm really not the guy you don't want to know what you're thinking, because if I have to define it myself based on my history, I'm probably going to come up with the darkest definition in the whole damn world, just based on my own past. You know what I'm saying? So it's almost like you help. It can't be as bad as I'm going to make it. So you would be wise to give me the darkest truth you got, because I'm telling you, mine is worse. So you know what I'm saying? That's why it's vital. I mean, communication is really, really vital.
It really is. But I mean, I think that was a moment where you gave her that opportunity to know it's okay to express, because maybe from her past, she didn't know how to honestly express.
Well, I was glad that I didn't. I was glad that I held on to the hope that I could be incorrect.
Yes.
I knew that I was having to define it for myself.
Yeah.
I'm not one of the Avengers. I knew that it could very well be wrong, but I needed to define it so that I could move forward. If I didn't define it, then I would have been stagnant, wrestling with what it is. Michael Burnham on on Star Trek, paraphrasing, it says something to the effect of, there is no answer for the uncertainty of life. And so for me, when I don't have an answer, it drives me crazy. Now, the answer can be the darkest of the dark or the brightest of the bright, but as long as I know what the answer is, I can navigate it.
Right.
If I don't know if the answer is dark or bright or
Right.
where it is on that scale, then I will lose my mind trying to figure it out until I decide, okay, this is what it is, right or wrong. And guess what? This is who you get from here on, because I've defined it that way. I'm not going to make an announcement. I'm not going to get into it with you, but I'm going to decide what it is, and then I'm going to move forward equipped with what I've decided it is.
You can make an educated decision.
Mhm.
That's the key. And that's, to
He
me,
jumped- he took a leap.
I was just going to say that that is like the centerpiece of communication to me, besides just knowing when and how to communicate, but providing each other with educated information so that it can make an educated response to whatever it is. I always say I've never been a person's like, I don't care how bad it is or how bad you think it is. Tell me about it. Let's talk about it. I need to be able to say, we can talk about it and you feel safe talking about it. I try to lay down that framework where you're always going to be safe to bring to me whatever it is you feel is important to bring to me.
But you got to earn that safety. You've got to earn that trust, that belief. You know, it's like in music.
Well,
You're a musician. There's two musicians in the room, right? I am too.
I am too.
And four of us. Okay, so there's
four
here we
musicians,
are.
5.
Here we are, depending on the other person to provide the chord structure we need to sing the song. We need this tempo. The drums have to be such so we can understand the meter. It has to be like that in relationship too. We can't be imagining what somebody thinks because we see them as clones of ourselves, and that's usually the first mistake. Oh my, you meet on some key issue and you go, oh, he's just like me, how wonderful. And you assume everything else is going to be the same. You stop exploring. I had a couples professor that I really admired. He said, the best relationships are those in which the partners remain infinitely curious. Meaning you don't assume what this behavior is. You just kind of go, that's interesting. What led you to do that? It's different. It's different. Explain to me. It's not accusatory. It's simply exploring. Oh, well, he does, like the guy, I had a guy I worked with that had a tuna sandwich every day for lunch for 10 years. And one day I said to him, do you ever get tired of tuna? He says, no, that's my favorite. And I thought he was just, that was his wife's kind of monochrome way of dealing with him, was giving him a tuna sandwich they actually loved it. And I would have made the wrong assumption based on just watching him very deliberately open up his lunch every day. We can see a lot in simple behavior.
Yes.
And it can be very benign
Oh.
response. And I applaud you, Sean, for having the introspection, knowing yourself well enough to know, hey, wait a minute, before we go another step, I got to have this box.
Yes.
I need to know this part. We're not going anywhere down this road.
Exactly.
And you gave her that opportunity.
Right. That right there. Go, because this conversation is going to really good. It's getting nice. I like the way it feels. Because again, that's why I love talking to Sean and Kenry and Will, men who have, who understand the importance of communication, and women, I know Sandra, I've heard her, and Sharice, I'm getting to know, but communication is very important to me. But again, my voice was robbed from me as a child. And I became a teenager who never spoke or expressed. I became an adult who never spoke or expressed. So when I got married, like my husband was very talkative. He has the gift of gab. And as Sandra was talking about sex, that was, I guess you can call his love language. I don't know, because that's pretty much what he wanted all the time. I didn't mind, but it was just that he didn't understand, being young and not being trained. he didn't understand what my body as a virgin, because I had never been with anybody before. And as a virgin, not having those conversations, not touching me the right way, my body, again, that's if I had told him what was happening to my body, you know, we could have adjusted and learned how to make love together. But it
At
was like,
22, he wasn't gonna know. I promise you.
what did you say?
At 32, he wouldn't have known.
At 22, he
That's
you
my
know,
point. So
right.
what happened, you know, where the breakdown, that's why I always say, I'm not painting him out to be a villain, but this is a very important topic in relationships. I needed to tell him that my body wasn't reacting anymore because he didn't take the time to let the juices flow. I mean, like, you know what that's like?
Hallelujah.
You are not a microwave. You are a kettle stove.
But this is where I shut down. And it was like a month in, because the only thing he could say to me was, it wasn't, baby, let's talk, like, what's wrong? It was, because we were having like sex morning, noon, and night. You know what I mean? And I was enjoying it. But after a while, my body just shut down. And the only thing he could say to me was, you're ugly, who would want you? But he said it was that little boy in him. So I immediately just like, and I never felt attracted to him anymore. And it wasn't until like years later that I finally verbalized this, you know, so I can't make him out to be a villain. He just didn't know.
Well,
Well,
he was a
that's
little boy.
beyond not.
I wanted to say
knowing.
real quick, because I know we're running out of time. I know sex has been cheapened so much.
Say that again.
Sex has been cheapened so much, especially the perspective that women have in terms of the man's lens, the way a man sees sex. And so it becomes lost on a lot of women that when a man loves you, that is actually one of the most significant ways that he affirms his love for you is through intimacy. And so if he hasn't taken the time to make sure that it's in a framework where you can receive it, CHAR, which you weren't able to because it wasn't in a framework where you could receive it, then he couldn't affirm himself with you. That was his fault. But the point I'm making is what you saw as sex, especially if you get older, when you're talking to a man who's 40, 45, 50, that's actually the way a man often affirms himself and affirms his love for you, is through the doesn't have to be sexual, but it's intimacy, it's touch, it's the physical touch, it's that kind of action. It's just that sex has been cheapened by men who aren't trying to love somebody, they're just trying to have sex.
Yeah.
Right? So
Right.
those men have cheapened what sex means to the man that loves the woman that he's with. And so that woman has to try to tune out all of the history that sex has as this goal that a man has. I feel for women every day. One of my good friends, she has some of the best legs ever. And we were at an event the other day, and she told me about 4 different guys that hit on her that day. And I said, what did you have on? And she showed me a picture. And I said, I was brokenhearted because even I couldn't legitimately vouch for those guys because I saw the frailty of man seeing those legs and going, "Ooh, I want to get to know her." Not knowing anything about her, not knowing how great a person she is, not knowing all the stuff she has to offer. They saw that outfit and was like, "Well, I want to get to know her."
There we go.
Okay.
I'll-
All right. Thanks,
when I-
Tobias.
Yeah, here was Sean, you were in the middle of something, weren't you?
Yeah,
Yes.
I was saying that as a photographer, oftentimes I post pictures of boudoir shoots I've done and this and that. And you would be surprised how men are in my inbox.
Men?
Yeah, because they see a picture of a woman that's fine, and they're like,
Kennery needs to be unmuted.
what's her name? That kind of thing. And I'm like, man, I understand that she's beautiful, but if that's enough to have you in my inbox, then I'm thinking your goal is sex. You know what I'm saying? Like, you saw somebody that you would want to sleep with, and you're in my inbox, and I'm not getting ready to transfer you to nobody I know, so you can try to conquer what you thought you saw. You know, so
No, it's so hard because, okay, I gotta figure out how to say this because I'm not trying to paint my ex out to be a villain, but no. So the religious upbringing that we grew up in, we knew we weren't ready for marriage. And because
you were 23 and 19, I knew you weren't ready for marriage.
Right. But he thought that was the best way to be able to have sex and not feel guilty.
So that's what it says.
It
says to before in
so
order not for
well,
your
let me finish, Darlene, 1 minute. Let me finish. So so he so it was like it's better to marry than burn. That's the scriptures. And but not really taking into consideration everything else, all the responsibilities that come with being married. So the pressure of that just took its toll on him and his frustration. So he thought like sex was going to see. I want to have that topic about the art of making love, because I think a lot of men and women, and not even gender, I'm trying to get out of that, but we have not been taught. It's just the act of sex. It's not making love, connecting with your mate. Sorry, go ahead. I cut somebody off.
No, time is of the essence. Timing is everything. And sometimes it's the day of the month, or you just had a success in your life and you're feeling ebullient, and now you want to be sharing it with somebody. But the other partners had a shit day and they're not on the same page with you. So then you work together to create a space for both of you to take off the rest of the clothing, to take off the rest of whatever barriers are in the way, and then just discover each other every single time.
That just sounds so good the way you said that. That's all I ever wanted. That is all I ever. Can I tell you all, like, when it was time to, I would plan moments. You know what I mean? He didn't realize it was like a production. It was a production for me. The rose petals and all that, negligees and packing picnic baskets, taking him by the water, by the lake, all that. But he said that didn't really mean anything to him. It was more about the act. Because,
and I'm the same way, Char. I tend to do things for other people that I want done for me. And as you were saying it, I'm thinking to myself, that's because that's what you like. You like that.
Yep.
So that's why you're doing it that way.
You liked it grimy and stanky. Primitive and prehistoric and
not prehistoric.
Oh my God.
Risky. He wanted you to almost be able to get caught outside.
Did you remember the movie Caveman? Have any of you seen the original Caveman with Ringo Starr? And there was but there was a scene in the movie where these three women are bending over the creek washing something, and he comes across and sees their behinds. And what the portrayal there is, what women fear the most is that idea of being taken instead of surrendering. See, good sex to me is about surrender. If somebody can get me to the place where I surrender, I'm done. I'm ready to go.
Yes.
I feel defended. If I can't surrender, I go, no.
Except for those times when women wanted to be taken.
I was gonna say, if this was a different show, I would go ahead and say there are some women that have a fantasy about being taken. It just,
I like the balance of both.
John, it's also
we're all getting all happy. Wait, what did it say?
Sandra, it is, Sandra.
Let's not play here.
Yeah, because we're in
you have good sex, you have to have good communication.
There you go.
In itself is communication.
There you go.
I mean, the way
sensitive
you touch
climate.
someone, the way you touch someone, the way you receive touch, whether you feel safe in the places that they touch you, or the absence of touch. When you're just, have you ever been so enamored with someone that you've got close to touching their hand like this, and you feel the heat,
Yes,
and the desire is just building, and you're not even touching each other.
that's right.
So if there's a space for that to evolve, then nobody would be complaining here.
Come on, Sandra. That's what I'm talking about. You just broke it all down.
I've been single for 24 years, so I understand.
I don't know why. 'Cause I want to do every show in my future with you, Sandra. I don't know why you single. 'Cause You,
No, I'm embarrassed.
She gets it. She
you're
gets
the
it.
guest that I want to be on the show with every time.
All right. Well, I'm
Thank you.
planning
I'm
on,
flattered. I'm enjoying all of you so much.
I know, I'm planning the one I've been trying to do, the art of making love. And that's why I'm
Uh-huh.
doing communication first, is because a lot of times people don't see communication as, or sex or making love
Like
as
the appetizer.
communication.
It's like an
Yeah,
appetizer.
it is. It is like, I mean, it's like, do men even know? You know, a lot of times we were taught that sex was about the man. I don't know
Yeah.
about you
Yeah.
women, but it was taught that it was just about you all, and our bodies just belong to you. But men don't realize like the different parts of our body that you touch. And if you touch us the right way and you say the right thing.
Oh, yeah.
Some of us.
Well, worse
do
yet
that.
is
This
the
is the
whore
first-
Madonna thing that happens.
Ears.
This is the
Men
first
want
orgasm
us
right
to be
here.
crazy in the bedroom. That's
Hold on, Sharice, say
perfect
that
out
again.
type of street.
I said this is the first orgasm right here.
Yep.
Now,
I-
but you guys do have to consider that there are a multitude of kinds of people,
Mhm.
kinds of lovers, kinds of ladies. And so for the grounded among us, like you are, who understand how to unpack that and are willing to teach their mate how to unpack that.
But the mate has to be willing to listen.
There you
And he's
go.
not.
But
Right there.
where I'm going is, but you also have a large culture of women that treat it like a calculus test.
Oh, yeah, forget it.
And then you blame me because I don't know the answers. Like, you got to be willing to tell someone how to get you where you're going.
Right.
You know, if
And
you
that's
haven't told me your button in 6 months, and at the end of 6 months, you can't be frustrated with me. You knew where the button was the whole time, but you want me to successfully find it. That's part of your pleasure, is me finding the button. Me,
Not only,
Where's
not only
Waldo?
does she want you to find it, but she keeps moving it.
but she keeps moving
Right.
it, and
She
then
changes her
I'm already supposed to know where it is.
then you hate me at the end of 6 months. I'm retarded.
Sandra, that's the other half of the equation of how society teaches us.
Right.
You know, you guys are taught that thing, and then on the other side, we're taught, the goal is to make her scream.
Well, that too, but okay.
Right.
The
There's
screaming
no
comes much
roadmap.
easier with so much less.
But nobody painted the roadmap to how do you get there. The starting with the foreplay and all that.
So the
stuff.
roadmap is different for everybody.
Right.
The roadmap is different for
It's the
everybody.
first-
And that's-
Right.
I'm
But-
asking
Foreplay starts
questions.
first thing in the morning.
But some
what you
dudes
say?
just don't even know that is a thing.
Okay, but foreplay isn't just the act of foreplay prior to having intercourse. As you know, it's when you first get up in the morning and you see your
Come
partner, and he's laying next to you and you go, "Morning, baby," and then his mood is lifted. And then during the day, there might be a phone call or a text message that kind of carries that. And by the time that starts to come to fruition in the evening,
No pun
you're
intended.
both ready.
Right. Sandra get that call at lunchtime. So he just called and checked on me. I think I'm gonna give him some tonight. That was
Right.
really sweet. That was really sweet of him. He stopped and got my favorite roses on the way. I think I'm gonna give him some. That
You
was
know what's one of the most
My husband used to
Intimate
come home
thing.
for lunch. I mean, it was like morning and noon and night. I mean, and sorry, Kennery, don't stop. But his job, because he was like the number one salesman, so he was bringing a lot of money. But his job would let him come home, and it was like a 45-minute drive. That's the whole lunch Oh God, yeah. And I really miss that, you know.
He would come in, accost you, and then leave.
No, but it was nice. I enjoyed it then. I
I'm
enjoyed it
She
then.
enjoyed
But
her costume.
he got lost along the way, you know. He just
Well,
got
Sean,
lost
you
along
said
the way.
something about goal
Sean,
directed.
Kennery,
No,
don't
wait,
reach your thought.
Kennery was
Kennery,
about
you
to
had
say
something to
something.
say.
No,
Sorry.
I was just going to say that one of the most intimate things you can do is activities together, like cook together.
Yeah.
Oh, that is so sexy.
Things
Yes.
like that just set off the rest of the evening because
Can I say one thing real quick? Just piggybacking off of what Kennery said. Now, I've never been married, and I think I've said that before. But to me, couples who pray together, work out together, cook together, and it was one other thing, I can't think of what it is. But those people, I find it very difficult for them to have major issues in their relationships. Because if you're being in those settings, when you're being that intimate, those are intimate settings, when you're being that close with one another and being that in tune with one another, it's really hard for strife to find its way
Right.
into your relationship.
but that's constant communication, whether it's physical or emotional or actual spoken communication. That's constant communication. So you have your finger on the pulse of where that person is at, more readily than if you got to have separate time too, of course, but that's one of those things that just kind of drives the communication and the connection.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
And it's visible to others that don't try to de-sanctify your relationship. If they see that that connectedness and they see the loving touches and the looks and that clearly that nobody wants to mess with that. Nobody from outside. Oh no, I'm not touching that. But what you said, Sean, about goal versus journey is so true. My husband was an engineer and all that comes with engineering, which is he's very linear. Everything was like this is he's going to do the goal. So after he died, and I'm thinking, I would like to be married again, but I'm not anxious about it. And I just thought, now what do I need to do to find out? And here's communication as well. How do I find out if someone is even in my arena? Are we on the same page? And I came up with one question that, because for me, the most important thing was being able to be spontaneous.
Yeah.
To have some fun nature, it wasn't everything about the goal. So I would ask a fellow, as I'm getting to know him. So let's say you have a business trip, you're going to San Francisco, but you have a little extra time and you pass a sign on the road that says, interesting place, 30 miles. Are you going to take it or not? The goal-oriented guy says, oh, no, I got to get to San Francisco for the meeting. The process guy says, yeah, let's go look. There's a little adventure. And so I could ask that question and I could eliminate the candidates immediately because
Right.
I already had that. Guy. And it wasn't satisfying for me. I want somebody that's got some adventure in his heart at least. And even if we can't actually take the adventure, it's just the idea that let's dream a little out loud. Let's wish out loud. We got cut off from that when we were little. I told you at a first birthday cake, blow out your candle, make a wish, but don't tell anybody or it won't come true. What a silly idea that is. You got to tell somebody in order for it to come true. So then Christmas comes along and then they throw Santa Claus in your face. You can't ask me, but you can ask this stranger over here.
Yeah.
I would be in my late 40s before I figured that one out. I was like, damn, that's insane. So in my marriage, I had been taught to not ask for anything. And my husband would ask me at Christmas time, what do you want? I said, anything you want to get me is fine, which was a bold-faced lie. I've been dropping hints for 6 months. I want the cardigan sweater. That's all I wanted. And nothing, never showed up. So finally, I took this class on communication. And the title of the class was Knowing What You Feel, Saying What You Mean. It was a great title. And the teacher, I was talking to the teacher about this. How come women don't ask for what they need, really? because we don't want to appear to be selfish. Again, another Judeo-Christian ethic. You can't be selfish.
Right.
You're not selfish. That means you won't take care of yourself. And you have to be a little bit selfish to take care of yourself and someone else. So I tested it. I saw a woman that had a bracelet on that I rather liked, and I made sure there was no holiday or anything around. He didn't feel compelled to do it. I said, you see that bracelet over there? He said, yep. I said, someday I'd like to have one of those. Straight out. It was just, there's no frills. He was so excited after 10 years of marriage that I finally identified something that he could get for me that would please me. He went and got it the next day. I was like, what?
Wow.
Teacher said this, when you withhold the information, you deprive your partner of the opportunity to please you. And I went, wow.
That was a word.
Sandra,
That's gonna
That
be a
includes-
star quote. I already know.
that includes orgasms.
Yes, you bet. You
Yes.
bet.
Yes.
Don't
That
play with
includes
me.
Orgasms. Give me the road map. I promise I'll go there often.
Right. Right. This
Well,
is a journey.
Then you have to deal with the other part of some egos who have been struggled with. You know, like if I asked for something, he'd say, well, where did you learn that? And I go, I don't know, I'm just asking, just trying it out. And this is what would freeze up. This would be his fear that I was messing around with somebody, which is what he brought to the party. It wasn't me.
Right.
Well,
Right.
that's why he had that fear. He
I
knew
was
that
about
it
to
was
say
the
that.
reality because he was guilty of it.
He was
12
projecting.
years old, he had his first girlfriend reject him. So he looked at his life in terms of all the women that had left him. And I was now, however many along the road. And I said, I'm not that woman. If I don't want to be with you anymore, I will tell you that we can't make it. I'm not going to cheat on you ever. But he couldn't drop that perception. That's the lens at which he looked all women, including me.
Wow.
It's very, very hard to live through that.
Sandra, that's kind of interesting because one of the things that happened during my marriage was very interesting to me. You know, she had been married before and her husband cheated on her. So we were like, I don't know, we were 10 years in. And one day she came home from a trip. She had gone out of town for a couple of days. And she came home from the trip and I was out working. And she found a scarf, of a woman's scarf. And when I got home, immediately her first thought was, who's been here?
Wow.
And I was like, okay, you've known me for all these years. You know, I'm not that guy. You should know that by now, 10 years in. But she really got upset thinking that it was someone else's scarf. I said, well, okay, let's stop and think about it. Has anybody been here in the last few weeks that was female that you know? And she stopped and think about it. Her niece had been here. It was her niece's scarf.
Wow.
But in my mind, I'm like, why was your first response to think that I would have cheated on you and been stupid enough to leave a scarf?
She had that experience.
She had that experience.
But that's what I mean when I say you have to factor in, you got to know the character of the person that you're with. That should not have been, even if it came to the back of her head, that should not have been the most immediate response because nothing in my character says that I would cheat on her. You know, and
Did you understand her?
And I'm a musician who has plenty of opportunities to do that.
Yep.
Yeah.
But you understand she had some broken places that she didn't deal with.
But it's
Right.
not up to him to figure them out. It's up
No,
to
it's
her
not.
to
But
do it.
again, if she doesn't even know how, right. But again,
But
if she
thus-
doesn't even know how to communicate.
Thus us being divorced. There were a lot of things like that came up in the last couple of years. Like our first big fight was about a financial situation that I didn't even have any idea that she thought that way about. I like Sean, like you said, Sean, no clue. I would not have ever, especially from how we had interacted financially over the 10 or 9 years prior to that. You know, I never knew that she felt a certain way about a certain thing financially.
Because something came up and triggered it.
Right. So, you know, communication again.
Communication. Sean, do you need to go? If anybody needs to go, don't feel, don't, you
Yeah,
don't have to stick
I'm gonna dip out in a second. It's good, so I'm trying to get as much as that.
It's good, right? Good stuff. Well, I'm gonna follow up with this with the art of making love. That's where I really wanted to go to, and it seems like we touched on it automatically anyway.
I don't know if that's safe for me.
When I deal with people on these
Stop
topics, as a client relationship, I try to remind them that basically humans are creatures of habit. We like our creature comforts. We know where the toothpaste is in the cupboard. If the wife is going around moving everything, we spend a lot of time being confused about where things are. And those creature comforts make a difference in how we navigate the day. So I said to them, if some change happens in your life, it is okay to have a momentary blip. We function habitually. So let me give you the example of the car with a shift that has a stick shift. You have a foot pedal for the clutch, you have a foot pedal for the brake, and there's a foot pedal for the gas. If the car manufacturers tomorrow decided to switch the location of the clutch and the brake, there would be a lot of accidents. You would be putting yourself through a window because your reflex would be to step on the brake and you've just stepped on the clutch, or vice versa. You would adapt, but in a moment of crisis, that old behavior will come back. No matter how hard you try to erase it, it will always be the first impulse. And that's what happens in communication breakdown. You're reacting to something that's really archaic and old inside of you that has nothing to do with the person in front of you. And now we're back to Kennery, dealing with the person in front of you, not the person that you wish them to be.
Yeah.
Very, very true.
Wow. Darlene, we'll get ready to shut it down.
Yeah, I'm going to dip out, Char.
All
You
right.
guys were so awesome. So
Thank you,
enjoyed
Sean.
you. Please, good to see you.
Thank
Sandra,
you.
so nice meeting you. Darlene, good to see you. You guys be good.
Okay.
Appreciate you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Darlene, did you have something to say?
And I was just thinking about what I think where I am as far as dating is I don't have a problem trusting who I meet. I have a problem, let me see, how can I put this? For example, the way I was raised, the ability to communicate. We didn't know how to do that. And so I found myself always needing to communicate because I was always shut down.
Right.
And so now I'm always like, I'm ready to talk. Okay, what is this? What is that? For example, I was talking to my mother. I was trying to get to know my mother.
You're breaking up. You're breaking up.
I was trying to get to know my mother. This was about maybe a month ago. They like, you know what I was saying? They talk on text, but nobody really talks to me. So my brother got on there. I don't remember which one. And they was telling me how they brought my mom up to Atlanta because most of them stay in Atlanta. And she was up there visiting and they had all these conversations and that we should sit down and talk to mama and because she's got a lot of stories to tell. Okay, I tried that. To my detriment. I couldn't get anywhere with her. And I'm saying that to say this about communication. I am amazed that I can talk at all. I have been finding peace within myself, even without answers. I mean, I honestly, I kept asking my mother questions about stuff. Sure, like my mom, I was telling you, my mother got married, my dad, when she was 16, he's 18. She moved in with my mom, but my grandma allowed my father to be abusive. So I kept asking my mother, why did your mom let you stay in that? Why was my dad allowed to do that to you with my mother there, with your mother there, and she left your dad because of that? And no communication. There are so many answers left unanswered. And that's why when we was talking about communication, I was excited because I was like, I'm so glad, even if I had to go through what I had to go through to learn how to communicate.
Yeah.
You know what, Darlene? I got to go in a few minutes. The crazy thing about that generation, they are such an in-between generation where they just they did not know how to. They thought that things were supposed to be a certain way, and I can go through my whole family and get stories from that generation of stepfathers and men who came in who abused, and
Yeah.
parents that allowed it because they were afraid, or they didn't want to lose this man, not because they loved him, but because he was providing for the family or something. So they put up with stuff that they shouldn't have put up with. They should have been protecting their children, but they didn't know how, because they're a step away from the generation before them where there was no protection. They were still enslaved or indentured service, and the men weren't able to protect. So they're used to not being protected. So there's a lot, and there was no communication. So, there wasn't an opportunity for communication. And then you have the men who are angry because they're coming out of they're coming out of slavery or Jim Crow or whatever. And they come home and they take all that mess out on their families, their women, their children.
Yes.
And then you just have some bad people, who I can't wrap my head around assaulting a young girl, stepchild or not. It just I can't make that click. But there are men that are sociopaths or whatever the case may be that had those type of tendencies. So there was a lot of things that they didn't know how to do that they could not teach us because they had no clue. They were coming out of dysfunction and they were coming out of oppression. So they had no clue. And that's not an excuse. I'm just saying that I learned early on that there were only certain things I was going to learn from my parents because they weren't equipped to teach me anything else. And they did okay. They did a pretty decent job, my dad never told me he loved me. Maybe once, and it was too late. But it was okay. I knew in his own way, I figured out who he was and that he did love me. He just didn't have the tools to tell me that. He didn't have it. And that was okay. But now in your situation, and situations like that, you end up with a lot of damage. That's what I call generational curse. Mm-hmm. It's a thing that gets passed down on and on and on until somebody has the strength or the wisdom or the understanding to break it. And, it's hard. It's hard. On top of living this life in this country with the macro and microaggressions that we deal with on a regular basis, there's so much stuff happening. It's a wonder we're just not all insane walking around.
Right.
Well, we pretty much are.
Speak for yourself. I'm not.
We just function well with it.
Yeah, a lot of dysfunction.
Right.
The thing is, you can't teach what you don't know.
Yep.
Now, I'm a middle-class white girl, right? Mm-hmm. Nothing happening within my house in a sexual way, but my mother had friends, and one of her older friends decided he was babysitting me, and I was 8 years old and discovered things I shouldn't have known about for many years. And I couldn't tell anybody. So you talk about losing your voice. That's the voice you lose.
Yeah.
Oh, dear. If I speak, somebody's going to figure this out. Somebody's going to know. And it does distort your sense of self-acceptance. It distorts whether you're worthy.
Right. I was going to say, Sandra,
desirable, lovable.
Doesn't it turn into self-blame?
Sure it does.
Yes.
And guilt and shame.
Mm-hmm. And then male society doesn't help with that because they reaffirm that guilt and shame because you can't even go to the police and make a police report about somebody having assaulted you without you.
Well, what's worse is that they don't even let you because they don't want to deal with the embarrassment of their wife. My father was a prosecuting attorney in Salinas, California in 1954, I think it was. He was trying a case of a woman who was going to her gynecologist, and her gynecologist knocked her out and did her on the table, and she woke up. He had been, it was a regular practice of his with his patients. Someone's supposed to be revered and respected.
Is that
in
the one who
community.
was inseminating women with his semen?
No. This was way before that.
See, there's a lot of them.
It's a
Okay.
lot.
This was way before that. So what you have is a situation where the one woman is strong enough to come forward. And then she has to defend, how did she let this happen?
Mhm.
Right.
And I had a wonderful sociology professor at UCSB in his primary delinquency class. And he talked about, to the whole class, it was men and women. I'm the oldest in the room by 20 something years. And he said, gentlemen, men are getting funny about their women being raped, and they call them damaged, and they basically got tossed away. He said, I want you to imagine yourself wearing your Rolex watch down the street and it gets robbed. And the district attorney and everybody else starts to blame you. It's your fault because you wore your watch.
Mm.
That's kind of what women have dealt with. And so they're suppressed into silence in the most heinous way because they are not at fault. This woman came forward. My father was the prosecutor, and of course, you can't get doctors to testify against each other. It was in the days before they had a second person required in the room for the exams. Out of that case came some good things. And Miranda came out of that case because there were cops that were taking guys and beating them up down in the basement with a bald naked light, because that's how they interrogated in those days. My father was very much an ethics guy. He won that case. It was his first big case after
Wow.
being. And the doctor did go to prison, despite all the odds against it.
You said he didn't go?
No, dad won the case, and the doctor went to prison.
Oh, okay.
And against the odds. I mean, dad's chance of winning that case were very slim because you can't get evidence. There's nobody else. There's no witness. There's all just him and the woman that he's knocked out. And she was the only one that woke up and the only one that would speak to it. So between the 50s and today, all of these voices are emerging. Now, maybe too many are piling on. The Me Too movement, it was long overdue.
Right.
But it was tainted.
Mhm.
It became tainted. That was my biggest problem with that
Yes,
movement.
of course.
Is that, and because there's always people on every side of the coin who's going to take advantage of stuff. So it became not focused on things that were legitimately things that should be brought to the spotlight. But then it became a circus. Oh, he winked at me at work. Me too. Okay, now you're just diluting the cause.
And that becomes the hypersensitivity.
Right.
But if you don't stop the wink at work, here's what happens, Kennery. This is the hard part about being female. Is if you don't stop the wink at work, you don't say, nah, I don't want you to do that. Now you become a pariah to them. Your job is at risk.
Right.
There's so many other micro ways in which we get assaulted other than physical rape. There is no right way to say, look, this is where my boundaries are. And good communication starts with understanding with where you stop and I begin, and where I stop and you begin. We have to know, you can't talk to me this way. You can't touch me this way. I want you to do this.
Well,
So in the office, the power person always has the highest card. Person with holding the chains on the job and the life they're living. If you're afraid you're going to lose your job and you can't pay your rent, you're going to go along with a lot of shit that you don't want to go along.
Let me ask you this. So, just from this perspective, I avoided trying to be social beyond just social at work when I was working corporate jobs. But let's say you're at a job and there's somebody that you're attracted to, and you all go out, maybe it's a company event later. You're not the power person. You're just, on the same level. And somehow in the conversation, it comes up that you found that person attractive. And then she says to you, well, how come you never said anything? That's where the catch-22 kind of comes in because, a lot of men, the other backlash that happened from the Me Too thing for men was a lot of women saying, well, men don't talk to women anymore. Oh, you don't approach women anymore. So it's like
Mhm. Men don't know how to be men anymore because of all the confusion.
right. So that happened, after the whole Me Too thing. It's like, but we can't, because you're saying that if I say anything to you, and again, I avoided it in circumstances where I was working with someone, because it's never going to work out well. It's just not.
You're a smart boy.
it's a complicated thing.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that my studies brought to me was an awareness of how incredibly prevalent sexual abuse is for all children. They've done studies where young boys have been evaluated to that it's like 65% of boys, of those who will admit to it, have been violated as young child. In women, it's somewhere near 75 to 85% of all women have been molested in their life. Now, if you start out your life like that, imagine how trusting you might be in the arms of someone who is, 50 pounds heavier than you are, with an upper body strength that can squash you in a heartbeat. It's pretty scary. How do you get to that place of being able to, for both of you to surrender, where you can both trust enough to let go?
Again, I wonder how we even procreate and survive.
Yeah, exactly. And I do understand that there are times when some women are a little bit more titillating than others, and they deliberately try to get the man beyond the place of no return.
Right.
But I had a debate with my dad in the kitchen about Mike Tyson and the girl, the 16-year-old. My father was always a supporter of the underdog, which meant that he thought Tyson got a bad deal. And I said, Dad, if you accept the premise that either party in a potential sexual encounter has the right to say no anywhere along the process, just because she had said yes to going to see his etchings up in his hotel room, did not mean she was saying yes to being raped.
Right.
And he
16?
Yeah, and he looked at me. He looked at me with that look like, how can you say that to me? I knew he was going to get mad, but I stopped and I listened, because I knew his power was taking over my almost 50-year-old woman. And I couldn't stand up to him very well. And I just said, well, Dad, as I approach 50, I realized that sometimes you and I are going to have a different point of view, and that's okay. And he relaxed immediately, and the tension disappeared. But the fact that he would have said it has shocked me, that he took the view that he was blameless, Mike Tyson, because of his upbringing.
See, here's the thing with this is another thing that to me just got it. It gets taken too far when it catches wings, and it goes too far when they started saying things like, okay, yes, you can say no at any part of the process. But then it was added to that, even if you allow him to penetrate. Why? So why would you set yourself up unless something dangerous happened, or like you're about to get into it and you notice he has a machete on the wall that's dripping with blood? He's like, oh no, I think I need to stop right now. I get that. You should be able to say no in the process, but then
why would you? Your prime question was, why would you stop? It's because of that push-pull. You want to go, but you can't. There's too many other social factors that press on you to say no.
No,
either the church or mom and dad or something. It's
Look, wait. How old was Mike Tyson at the time?
No, he's in his 20s, I think.
And this girl was 16?
Right. She was jailbait, no matter how you look at it.
Right. That's an extreme situation. That's a situation where I think we all have to remember to be responsible for our actions. A 16-year-old, not so much. She's not going to be that smart and being, if you go up to a celebrity's room, 8 times out of 10, they're going to look at it as sex, because that's what happens to them. Do you know what NBA players come home from the game and they are waiting for them left and right?
Right,
They
yeah,
have people bringing them to them.
yeah, in the
Yeah.
face.
How's
Yeah.
that the
I
same
saw
thing
a,
with
I
R.
saw,
Kelly?
I saw there was a special on one day. There are women who literally make a living from doing this. They will
Yeah,
follow
we start them
celebrities
in.
from city to city. They said one woman was quoted, she said, "I'll sleep with everybody until I can get up to the celebrity." So there's mindsets out there that everybody has to be careful of. And when we, at the end of the day, as the person, if I'm the person who's getting sex thrown at me, my responsibility is to not let it happen, or to be wary or to understand what the situation is.
Right.
If I'm the person that's throwing it at somebody, you have to understand the consequences of the situation you're putting yourself in.
Mhm.
And that doesn't make the end results right. That doesn't make somebody assaulting you right. But it means that you have to think it through. You have to be responsible for where you allow yourself to be.
And in that same crime and delinquency class that I described about the watch, this particular grad student, who happened to be a male, said to the class, "Gentlemen, you don't even realize the kinds of protections that women have to put in place in order to go out to a movie by themselves at night. You don't worry about walking across a dark parking lot by yourself because you have strength and you've been taught to fight. Women are the weaker sex in the sense that they don't fight. They have to run and they have to be scared just to go into a movie. How would you like to live your life that way?" And he was trying to raise that awareness that women are much more frightened about getting around in the world.
And that's another part of the equation. I mean, it's not simple.
It's not. But okay, so we're going to wrap it up. Thank you guys so much for this wonderful dialogue. But doesn't it feel better when we can talk about these things? Because a lot of times we feel like we're alone. We feel like we're the only ones going through certain things. But just putting voice to it, helps us.
And Darlene, I really respect your revelation. I mean, that was a lot of pain coming out from not being able to make connection with your mom, and I understand those things really well. I wish there was a forum for that, because all of us have parents that we couldn't quite connect with.
I mean,
it's a burden. It goes a long way. It takes a long time.
It does.
Thanks for
saying
saying that, a burden
anymore.
It just let me realize the more I listen and hear, I really listen with my heart, the more I realize I've grown a lot. Because had this been 2 or 3 years ago, a month ago, I'd have been in tears because I wouldn't have understood why would she not talk to me. And I told my daughters, I don't really know what I would feel if my mother would pass now, because I don't have a relationship with her. She's my mother, and that's probably the same way I felt about my father. I was sad that I didn't have a relationship with him. That was the most thing that was the most I experienced out of his death. And the same thing with my mom. I have her picture over there. I see her, and all I think is, man, I wish I would have had a better relationship. Because if she died today, that's what I would be thinking.
One last thought for that. I realized at some point, because I was a stepmother for a number of years, and the kids didn't want me here, and that's okay because they didn't pick me, their dad did. But we didn't get to pick our parents. It's the luck of the draw. It's a lottery ticket. But they didn't pick us either. Whoever we become,
right?
We can either be to live in spite of them or live because of them, or a mixture of both of those things. But sometimes things go wrong. You're asking why your mom didn't communicate with you. Maybe she just wasn't capable of communicating at all.
Right.
So,
I admire and love you, ladies.
Thank you. We admire and love you too, Kennery.
Okay, I know you're trying to tell us bye.
No, well, CHAR is telling us bye, but I'm just saying.
But I appreciate you saying that. That's why I love to have Kennery and Sean and men like that who are willing to hear and to learn and to understand
And to share.
and
I
to
think the
share.
sharing part is really important.
Yeah,
Exactly, exactly.
I just wish it was more of them.
That's okay,
Yeah.
but that's what these platforms are for.
These are the drops in the water.
Yes.
Pond.
If you build
One
it,
drop
they
in the
will
water,
come.
it goes out.
Build
One
and
of them
they will, you
becomes
better
people that
say
help.
that, girl.
What?
That's one of my favorite quotes from, what
Build
is
it
it?
and they will come.
It's a movie, something
It
in the
is.
outfield.
Yes, yes, that's one of
Angels
my
in the
favorites.
outfield.
Oh, okay.
That's one of my
Oh, wow.
favorites.
But
If you
you
build it, they
become
will
that,
come.
that champion of things different. You can be in a cluster of men who are not as sophisticated as you are, either intellectually or emotionally. And you can maybe by your own example, show them that there are other ways to be, that they don't have to
Exactly.
copy the prior generation.
Exactly. That's important. And that, again, that's what I literally, I prayed before this session. And I'm very intentional, about what I'm doing. It's not just let's get a whole bunch of people together
Right.
and talk. There's supposed to be some healing taking
Right.
place, and I feel like that's been happening. So I'll be in touch with you guys.
Okay.
Thanks, John.
Sandra, girl,
Thanks for
Sandra,
hanging in, Kendra.
you,
What do you mean me?
fire. You are
Have a nice evening,
fire.
everybody.
What? What'd you say?
Have a nice evening.
Look,
Sleep
look,
well.
look. She can't even take the compliment. You better hold up. Hold up. Hold up.
You better get your flowers,
That's
Sandra.
right. I'm saying, because you just made some deposits for all of us that
Yeah.
are so significant. And a lot of times it's hard for people of color too to take instruction from Caucasian. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And
I agree, but I had to
Yes.
work with a lot of Black musicians who taught me everything. So I don't see the color in the same way that many folks of my generation or ethnicity do.
I know, but I wanted you to know
We're all
how
just people.
significant. I want you to know how significant this was and you being here.
Well,
It
I'm
means a lot.
grateful for that. I would
Yes.
much rather be a positive force, as you all are. And
Yes.
thank you for allowing me to participate.
Thank you. Thanks
Have
for
a nice evening.
Yes. Love you guys. Have a
Good
great
night.
night.
Take care of yourself.
Okay.
Good night.
Bye-bye.